Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Political Job Interview, where I interview candidates running for election. I'm Vincenzo Calla, the host, and today I take on the role as the boss, giving a job interview to today's candidate, Steve DesRoches. Steve is running for election for Ottawa City Council as a candidate for Ward 22, Riverside South, Finley Creek. Thank you, Steve, for your time, and thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you, Vincenzo, for taking this on. This is so important for our democracy and young people. This is going to be the first election where my oldest son is going to be voting. So great to see youth and young people participating in our municipal election.
Well, it's great to have you here today, and I don't want to spoil too much from what I'm sure you'll talk about later, but it's great to have you on specifically because you were the counselor that was serving my area when I was a young child growing up, and you were sort of my first sort of exposure to politics. You know, I didn't really know what you did or who you were much, but I remember hearing your name around at school and in the dinner table. So it's great to have you here. It's sort of going back to the roots. So without further ado, let's get this job interview started. So as with any good job interview, I'm starting off with an opportunity to learn more about Steve. So the first question, Steve, is can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your story?
Sure. I first moved to Ottawa to go to university in 1988, and I'm a graduate of both the University of Ottawa and Carleton University. So I cheer for both universities. I've been a public servant for most of my career, with the exception of 8 years where I was a city councillor for the Board of Gloucester South Nepean. I was elected in 2006 and re-elected in 2010. And been very involved in my community. Live in Riverside South. I've lived here with my wife and 4 children since 2002. And really, my involvement in the community is what ramped me into politics. Was working very closely with my community association, getting involved, and um, answering the call to help make our community better by investing in kind of the infrastructure that is needed for growth areas like Finley Creek and Riverside South. So it's been a great journey for both myself and my family, and look forward to hopefully serving once again at City Hall.
And for sure, and I understand that when you were as a counselor, you were deputy mayor as well, and you sort of held some big positions like that as well. And you're coming back to run again, and hopefully go back to City Hall after so many years of after a few years of not being counselor anymore, and hopefully going back.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd made a commitment to my family and to my community that I wouldn't run in 2014. That was 8 years ago, and I kept my pledge to the community. It's been a great 8 years. I've returned to the Federal Public Service, working for Agriculture Canada as well as the Canada Border Services Agency, and have had that opportunity to recharge and to get some kind of new perspective on what we need to do for this city and for our community.
Definitely. And moving on, I wanted to ask you, and it has been 8 years since you were last holding this office in this ward. And I wanted to ask you, why have you decided to run for this position? And adding on again.
Well, I love this community. I love this city. My family has deep roots in Riverside South and the ward, and there's still a lot of work to do to keep up with the tremendous growth. And for me, this very much is a call to service. I've had a number of people in the community asked me to put my name forward. As you know, the ward boundaries have changed. So this ward was once called Gloucester South Nepean. It's been divided just because of the tremendous growth that is happening. And with that, of course, comes growing pains. Lots of new people moving into the community, into to new homes and starting a new life in Finley Creek and Riverside South. But with that comes the need to build well-rounded communities that has the infrastructure and has the reliable city services. And I've seen my children grow in this community. There's been a lot of change, and there's still a lot of work to do. And I think I bring a great deal of experience to the table to help advance our community and again make it one of these 15-minute communities where we have employment and retail, and commercial, and educational services in our community.
Well, you touched on a lot of great points there, but especially the growth. when it was still the Gloucester South Nepean, Barrhaven, that side of Barrhaven was growing, and Riverside South Finley Creek was still growing. And now that it's two separate wards, and especially Riverside South Finley Creek, it has grown over many of the years. But especially now, the LRT is going to be there soon, and the new public library and city rec center areas are going to be there. So lots of growth for sure, especially since you last served.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of good projects on the books, and we need to move those from the books and the plans to reality, and getting them construction ready and shovels in the ground, so that again, the folks moving into this community, or the folks that have lived here for 2 decades, or the folks that have lived here for many, many decades. I think we can often forget that Riverside South and Finley Creek, while they're new communities relatively, there's a lot of older established communities here, like Gloucester Glen, Leitrim, and Honey Gables, and all of these older communities are also looking to ensure that the community is well served with infrastructure and key services.
We're going to take a bit of time to talk about the job and what Steve brings to it. So the first question, Steve, is why do you think you were the best candidate for this job?
Well, I think I'll start by saying that I have the experience, having served for 8 years on city council. I know the job. I know what I'm getting into. There's no orientation or training for me. I'm very confident that on day one, if elected, I will get to work to serve this community. And I have deep roots in this community. I know it extremely well, having served on the community association, having been a library trustee. I understand the needs of this community. I think I walk in the shoes of many of the residents here, whether that be federal public servants who are going to a hybrid work environment, or the many families that have moved here or will be moving here that want to start a family like we did. So the experience that I have, I think will put to good use. I often tell people this is an election where we will have a new mayor and a lot of new councillors. So I think it will help to have some experience at the table and some perspective on the history of the growth in our community. And there's certainly a lot of work to do, as I mentioned, and look forward to, again, starting on day one.
For sure, and continue on that. You talked about some of the experience you had, and going deeper into that, maybe explaining further, maybe some of the things you did on council, and even outside of council, is what experience do you bring to this job? So maybe some of the specific stuff that you have done.
Well, one of the key themes of my accomplishments as a city councillor were results in the area of infrastructure. We know that these communities are planned to grow at a very, very high rate, but they need the infrastructure. So when I was city councillor, we had a long list of new parks. We had a long list of retail and commercial development. We widened roads. I pushed for the expansion of the O train to serve this community. Built the Vimy Bridge, as well as the extensions to make it probably one of the most popular crossings, certainly in South Ottawa, one of the more busier crossings in South Ottawa. So I've got a long list of infrastructure projects and services that I think have served this community, and I'm quite proud to highlight and point to my children some of the projects that I achieved during my time as a city councillor, and I look forward to making that progress. As I mentioned, I moved to the community in 2002, and one of the things that really moved me to run was that Limebank Road at that time was voted Ontario's worst road. So that was a great accomplishment, that Limebank Road was widened. I was on the community association when we fought to ensure that a school site would not be redeveloped, and that's now a school that my kids are now attending and have graduated. So this is a tremendous high impact job. And it should be, because the residents deserve and high expectations that when you're at the council table, you're working with your colleagues to deliver results for this community. And I think I've got a very strong record of results for this community here locally. We obviously have to look at the city overall. I was chair of Ottawa Community Housing for 2 years. So I understand that we need to have a sound housing strategy for all. I worked very hard on the city's economic development strategy. We have to get our city back on its feet, get the economy back on its feet. And I think it's important that we have an economic development plan for South Ottawa that includes the airports. We have employment lands in Leitrim, Finley Creek, as well as Riverside South. And it will be important to see that these employment lands are developed. We don't want to just be a bedroom community in Riverside South and Findlay Creek. We want to have, again, a balanced community where we have jobs as well as homes in the local community here. And that's one of my priorities, is to get a good, solid economic development plan for South Ottawa and the southeast portion, so that we're again attracting employment and jobs to these communities. And we know that with the federal public servants going back to work, it will be under a hybrid model. That means that there'll be, I think, much more need for commercial and retail in the suburban communities. And so I want to work with those businesses to ensure that they can grow and, again, serve a wider population of people that will likely be in our communities during the daytime.
Definitely, and lots of points there, and lots of points that we'll continue talking about in the next segment. So part of serving as an elected official is serving the people who elect you. So here are a few questions about how Steve wants to serve the people. So the first question is, what is something that the people you would like to serve, the people of Riverside South Findlay Creek, need that you would like to get done if elected?
First project that I want to work on is a recreational complex for the Riverside South and Findlay Creek area. We have been talking about it for years, and it's time to move from talk to action. We have always had land set aside. We have always been collecting money through the development charges to build this facility. I want to see us advance the plan so that we can have a hockey rink, a swimming pool, more soccer facilities in our communities. I often hear that folks here really appreciate the Minto Recreational Complex in Barrhaven that I work with Jan Harder. It is a real diamond in that community, and I see no reason why we can't make that a reality for the Riverside South community that will also serve Findlay Creek. And I have some ideas there. Right now, the lands that are set aside for this recreational complex aren't serviced. So that means it makes it very hard to get it construction ready. And if I learned anything from two projects in my community, one was the Vimy Bridge and the other was Earl Armstrong, is if you want to attract federal provincial funding for infrastructure, the projects need to be construction ready. And that's where my experience will come in to get that much needed recreational complex construction ready, so we can have the wins and the sales of potential partners to build this.
Oh, definitely. And you mentioned the Minto Sports Complex, and the Minto Sports Complex is one among many new recreation facilities or newer recreation facilities that have been built across the city, new modern buildings that service not just the needs of just a couple of people, but service the needs of an entire community. And it is truly a community hub. So building more of those across the city, especially where there aren't many, is very important.
Yeah, well, and it's a key part of this talk of building 15-minute communities. You heard that during the official plan, and I think politicians from the center, from the suburbs, and from the rural areas all agreed. People want to have limited commutes. They want to have services and businesses and facilities in their community. So, I hope that anyone who is running for either for mayor or for council who's talking about building 15-minute communities, that they'll join me in supporting some of the work that we need to do in these communities, so that we build balanced communities. So it's truly a place where you can work, live, and play. And again, I think the business case is extremely strong for a new recreational complex, because, as I mentioned, many of the federal public servants will be working under a hybrid work model where they'll be in the community during the daytime, and that's going to be very unique, because we're certainly used to, where I come from, that north-south commute in the morning and in the afternoon, in the late afternoon. I think we're going to see more people in the community that we need to serve them in the daytime, and I expect a lot of folks will want to use the recreational complex perhaps during the lunch hour.
Definitely. And it really is part of that changing landscape of our lives, especially lives in the suburbs, such as Riverside South and Findlay Creek, that yourself and many other people servicing those communities are now starting to think about and have thought about in the past 2 years. Now, I finally want to go into the last question, which is I'm sure you have many and we chatted a bit about a couple of them, but I wanted to ask, what is one accomplishment, if you were to choose one accomplishment that you have achieved that demonstrates why you would be a good elected official if the people choose you again?
Well, I'll point to the Vimy Memorial Bridge in the corridor that we built during my term in office. I often explain the history to folks who recently moved here that originally we were going to have a bridge as part of the Siemens North-South electrical rail that was canceled by City Council in 2006. I did not support that decision. I voted in favor of building it because we would have built a much more transit oriented community in its early stages and gotten ahead of the growth. But the reality is we lost that vote. And, I was really left with picking up the pieces from that. Riverside South and Finley Creek were ground zero for the impacts. We had basically an empty corridor and we were without a bridge. So it really took my grit and my determination, working with colleagues to get that bridge back on track, moving it through the design phases, getting the approvals of the National Capital Commission, going after federal provincial funding, extending Strandherd to connect with Prince of Wales, and then doing the upgrades to Earl Armstrong. So over $100 million in infrastructure there that needed to come together and did, and now is, again, an extremely popular network, whether you are on a bike, whether you're walking, or whether you're on the bus or driving. It serves all modes of transportation. And the icing on the cake for me was the commemorative naming that we did to commemorate the Battle of Vimy Ridge and the men who served in sacrifice and help build Canada over 100 years ago. So obviously it was a key piece of infrastructure, but also the commemorative naming really put it on the map. And it certainly deserves it. And we need to have that kind of commemorative naming in our suburban communities. The National Capital area doesn't just involve the downtown. Riverside South, Finley Creek, they're all part of the National Capital. And I think it's very fitting that we had a national structure like that to commemorate that. I'll also point out that we had some ups and downs through this project. And I was very transparent and kept in very constant contact with residents. And I think that's what they expect from their elected officials, to be transparent, to let them know how progress is going, to let them know when there are setbacks, and to be focused on one thing, is getting the job done. And that's what I did with this particular project. And there's probably not, I've been knocking on doors for several weeks and months. I get a lot of compliments for that. I run into business people who say, you know what, this really helped my business because now I can expand into a much larger market as a result of this. We know that the emergency services use it on a regular basis so that they can get to calls as quickly as possible. So I'm very proud of that. I think the community as well. And like I said, I think the experience of that project, both for myself and the community, needs to be replicated for some other projects that are now on the books, and we need to bring them to life.
Well, there's so much to be said about that bridge. First of all, it's become sort of, aside from it being super efficient and helpful for many community people, it really has become sort of an icon and a landmark in both communities. And especially you mentioned how it helped a lot of businesses. It really does, because a lot of people who may not have necessarily gone over to say the mall straight right over the bridge, some of even the people from the lower Prince of Wales area of Barrhaven even go over to Riverside South and shop at those local businesses because of the bridge. So lots to be said about that, but we're going to end it right there for today. So thank you, Steve, so much for joining me today. It was great having you, and I'm sure the viewers have enjoyed hearing what you have to offer to them. Election Day is on October 24th, 2022. And if you liked hearing what Steve had to say and live in Ward 22, Riverside South, Finley Creek, you have the opportunity to vote for him on Election Day. Check with your local election officials for more details. To stay updated, make sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at VC Productions 25. Check out my website, vincenzocala.com, and make sure to like, subscribe, and choose to get notifications here on YouTube. The Political Job Interview is a VCAL production, so until the next video, I'm Vincenzo Cala, signing out.